Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
We are back with our friend and architect, business owner, and CEO, of course, of his own company, John Riggio, joining us here once again. We're excited to have him here from Metuchen, New Jersey, but he's worldwide with his work. And the website itself, we can reach him at JOHNRIGGIO.com. Welcome back today. How are you?
Good. Hi, Joe. How are you?
I'm doing well. Pleasure to have you back. A great smile. I know I haven't spoken to you in a little bit. You've been speaking with Steve as well. So for new listeners just tuning in today, just tell us about you and your company to start. And then I know we're going to get into some personal stuff I'm learning about you.
Yes, my company is John Riggio, RA Architect LLC. I'm located here in Metuchen, New Jersey, and I'm an architect that works in the New York metropolitan area. That is New York City, New Jersey, Central New Jersey, and including the north and other areas of New Jersey and Pennsylvania.
Wonderful. Well, we are excited to have you here, and we've had some great conversations in the past about all the work you do from residential to commercial and so on and so forth. What did you have in mind for us today?
Well, I think I've had some previous shows and I started to talk about my tennis career because what happened is my architect work was really connected with my career playing tennis when I was young because architect work was flexible as far as you can have your own business, you could arrange your schedule to work with architect work. And from that is how I really got into architecture, went to architect school. And I think during this time from like when I was graduating high school, there was all these decisions on going into a certain job. I think some considerations I had at the time were also going into a career in computers, because that was a new industry at that time. Another one was going into the aviation, flying airplanes or helping support the aviation industry. And that was another thing that I was getting into. But really, the architect career, which I think I had described before, I had a lot of backing, a lot of experience with classes, and it looked like I could excel as an architect and I could work for myself. And I think from asking around in the tennis group, the top pros, a number of people were aware of architecture and people who play tennis, and they are also architects on the side. I think a few of the players that I did play, they were architects. I remember one player who had a pretty good high ranking of 1,000. He has his own office in New York City. Also, he was already an architect at the time, and he does do that architect work. And I think he was saying that it was pretty good with his schedule, that he was able to arrange time for him and things like that. I think I know some other people who won some pretty nice tournaments, and were really even from the U.S. and different locations in Europe, things like that. I know a few people were into things that are similar to architect work, as far as things that would involve drafting and things like that. So there was some backing with that. I think this whole thing with working as an architect and also playing pro sports was a new trend at the time, and I think this came about because of problems that had existed probably in previous generations. I think it came to something where a lot of times people who play pro tennis, they might not really have the ability to really get that much earnings. And I said some numbers. Some people end up maybe not getting any money for real. Some people might get only $16,000 a year, was some other numbers. Another factor was also a lot of people had to put a lot of money into playing tennis, which I can get into later. Their families had to pay a lot of money for them to play pro tennis. And that playing pro tennis, putting a lot of money into it, and then trying to get more money back, ended up making it where they really didn't make money. They really might have lost money because they had to invest so much into playing. So that is another factor that was taking place. But I think this playing tennis, playing pro sports, and going to school and having a job on the side is probably because of problems that took place when they really didn't have any money. Some people might have ended up homeless too. I heard
Ah,
stories of people
ah,
not really having any place to live. I think while I was playing tennis, there was some instances that people could end up going homeless, not having a place really to live, to sleep, and it started to become a problem. And but I think it might have even been worse in previous generations because so this whole thing with like going to college and getting a good career to make some money on the side seems to have been something that was growing. A lot of people agreed with the idea, and this always made it where you had some money in your pocket. I think over the years, I'm older now. I think there is one problem that maybe will have to get sorted out is when you get involved with working in any kind of trade, particularly construction, but any kind of trade, once you enter into the world of the trade, they have their own kind of way of where you are involved with
mm-hmm,
that profession, with that trade, and they keep
mm-hmm.
you busy with work.
Wow.
So if you're busy working in the trade and you prove to be a good at the trade, it fits you, you conform it, it's good work, and you can get good work and they'll keep you busy with the work. You can be busy working in your trade or profession. And I think that is one problem that is conflicting with pro tennis because I think they don't really say it out loud too much. But if you expose yourself that you are doing something else as a professional, it could become a problem as far as, especially when you're starting off, maybe in college, come a problem of like who was more important? Is your architecture profession more important, or is pro tennis more important? I think given from some older, I talked to a lot of people. I think pro tennis was really very high. I mean, my contract was very high. I talked on some other shows. I'll have to explain it, but my contract was very high with some big entertainers that are really big around the world and big in the U.S. And so I think that is somewhat really big, a really important thing. And architect work, I think the idea of going to college, it is important, and it is a good profession. It is important. I think talking to people in different types of work, a lot of people always wanted to become an architect, and it has a good center when you are working as an architect that you are sort of directing something on your own, and a lot of people like that idea. So, but I think compared as far as like the superstar entertainment world, I don't know if architect work is really as large as the superstar entertainment world. So that is one problem. Like, maybe a lot of people, like in any trade that you were working, you have a side job, and like you think one is better than the other. You think maybe you're taking advantage of a trade, or using like your work as like what they call like a stepping stone or things like that. So as far as I think about it, I don't think there should be a conflict. I don't really think about it like that, but I was always wondering as I got into it. So the idea that they have of people going to school and making some money, I think is the number one important thing. Then the next problem comes in with is your side work going to interfere with your your superstar work, your pro tennis work? And I think that is one thing about it. I think talking to some top pros, they say things like they wanted to maybe add on some things about tennis to make sure players stay in pro tennis. Like in architect work and professions, any kind of trade you have to get your education, you have to get your certificates, then you have to do things like continuing education, you have to maintain your license. So all those things keep people busy, keeps people studying, keep people working. And I think some of those type of things, some people had new ideas of maybe adding something like that to pro sports to keep people in the pro sports, and that it wouldn't just go away. And so I think with as far as that was concerned, I think I have to just jump ahead, but I think at some point, like when I was approaching like 30 years old, I think the tennis was very calm as far as what was going every day for myself. But the architect professional work was really getting going. My own office, busy from morning to night and things like that. And so that really was taking a lot of my time. And so that was very interesting. And that is what was happening really was also I was sort of starting to forget about a little bit of the tennis. Some people I was meeting as far as socially, I was meeting a new set of people at that time that was really like people who might be involved with entertainment, but they really didn't think too much about tennis, about me playing tennis. They might not have recognized me playing tennis. I might not have said anything about it. And that was a whole new chapter that was happening. And this one thing that was interesting at that time is that is like the years I started to get married. And so the thing with the tennis, the pro tennis, wasn't really being talked about that much. It started to slowly come back again. Start to come back again. Start to come back again as far as something I would talk about with my family and things like that. But there was a few years in there that was a little low, and no one really knew about it. But I was still meeting all kinds of people who were really in entertainment, and I think every once in a while, I think some people might have recognized why I was with people who were high entertainment. It was because of those tennis years. And so the whole thing with tennis was very dormant at that time around when I was like 30 years old. It slowly started to come back again. And I think I remember at that time there were some girlfriends I was with. I remember one girlfriend was really big in entertainment, and she is really like a production film company called Shan Productions. I think they do all kinds of adult entertainment movies, and because I remember seeing that on the television screen, the name. So I think that is really was interesting. But that was the years when I wasn't really talking about tennis. I mean, I was still with the group of people, which is very interesting. And then slowly, when I got married to my wife, Hujun Wang, was Anne Wang, and she very interesting had a cousin that was really the same, similar to like a pro tennis player in China. I don't think they really had pro sports at the time in China, and so I think that also started to bring back more things because when I visited China and her family, it turns out her cousin knew my whole career and had my player card, and she showed me my player card. And it was interesting because my player card when I was younger, my hair used to look a little blonde. It was a little like a little blonde on the card. So that was just another thing that really started to bring my memory back. And I played some tennis with her cousin.
Wow.
So when I visited there, I played in the wintertime and I played in the summertime. In the wintertime, we played indoors, and in the summertime, I played on her outdoor court. So she was an excellent player when she was younger, and that really helped bring back some memories at that time. And it slowly progressed to where I really started to remember what was going on, made a little web page about my memories and expanded upon it. And And now I've been talking about it on some podcasts, and it's pretty good. I'm happy about it. The career was very long in some ways, and I had to put together all the different chapters of my tennis playing. So I think that is what was very interesting. But I think what happened was just going back to this original idea, is that the idea of people getting like a side career to get some money, and then still continue to have their entertainment career or pro sport career, going at the same time, was very interesting. And I think maybe they can make some improvements to it. I always wondered if my professional career was interfering at all, stopping anything about my pro career. Because now that they always talk about it, I was really wondering if there were any stops starting to get created. Like, they need me to do more work, but maybe I needed to, take a few more hours involving myself with my pro career. And so I think also, like, when I was a little older in my career, I was doing things like making appearances, signing autographs, things like that. So some very simple things like that. And I think there are more things like that can. I was wondering if that was my pro career or my professional career. My professional career as architect was interfering at all. That's one thing I always wondered about. I was looking at some training CDs I have that are really like within the industry, and I was noticing on there that the tennis player was saying the same thing about how a lot of kids, they are encouraging them to go to college and get a career that might not have anything to do with sports, and so they could have a career with solid money, knowing they're making money somewhere else, and they don't have all those little pressures of going homeless and things like that, and any kind of other problem can start. And they already have years of experience of problems that were taking place with athletes. I wasn't told all of them, but I was started to get the idea that there were problems like that. And I think one problem that I was just going to talk about was, one of them was the paying for matches. Now, one thing, I was such an excellent player, I never had to pay for a tennis match. Since I was sponsored when I was young, my sponsors always paid for everything. And some of the matches were $20,000 per match. I think if you watch tennis on television, they don't say what's going on with the price of the matches, but usually to play as a top pro, the sponsors are really paying like $20,000 per match. And then, of course, if you're a successful tennis player winning matches, they're going to make so much more money back on you that the $20,000 is just a few dollars to pay for them. So it was one factor. And I think this happened one time when I once had a problem with one of my matches. They told me I was going to have a match at a certain time, and when the match didn't take place, I had to go and talk to somebody in the tennis center. And I went there and I talked to someone in the tennis center, and I told them I have a match scheduled at a certain time on this court. And they look and they tell me, okay, so to play the match, you have to give me a check for $20,000. And I said, I don't, I had to start to describe my tennis, who I was. And they say, oh, okay, you're exempted from the $20,000. So at that time, since I was such an excellent player, the $20,000 fee, even my sponsors didn't have to pay it, because I was such an excellent player. They made it where that match was for free. So this was already happening too in a lot of my games. Since I was a top player, I was winning, I didn't have to pay the $20,000. But at that time, they looked at me as an ordinary player, and they said they need a check for $20,000. So this is like a typical price for a top match. That this is a number that they told me about many times, that $20,000 was getting paid per match. A lot of players are paying the money. And I think one big thing that I found out about is that the players, they really some of them didn't really have a sponsor that could pay the money. They had to get the money from their parents. And this is when this whole thing was starting, really starting to realize what was going on, that they were really getting the money and writing a check for $20,000 per match to continue to play tennis, to really try to make it in the pros. And then hopefully at some time, if they win enough matches, they can get picked up by a sponsor and maybe they don't have to pay the money anymore. But some players did have to rely on their parents to pay these kind of matches to get into it. And I think some low matches, I heard some numbers, it only cost $1,500 to play in the tournament. But really to play the top pro matches, they're really much more expensive. At the time, it was $20,000 was really the going
Wow.
number. And so that was interesting. And I think from talking to the players, a lot of them didn't mind paying the money as long as they're really going to pay a top pro match. It was involving themselves with the pro tennis. There's chance for them to continue to win more games and maybe get a sponsor. It was worth it for them, but that's pretty big money for for them to pay and have their parents pay that kind of money. It's really that kind of fee of $20,000 is really more for like big sponsors. I remember starting off, I had Prince Racket Company was covering all those entry costs. It was really they were really the front company that was doing that whole thing. There were other investors and sponsors involved, but I remember at that time there was Prince Racket was covering all those numbers. And then they used to tell me that they really did win really big off me. At certain times, they would, I think, as far as just basic numbers, they
Wow.
would win numbers maybe $500,000 or more per tournament. That's so. That is some big numbers. So $20,000 isn't too much for that kind of big numbers. And that's so that was what was happening. And yeah, so this whole thing with playing tennis and having some money. I think if you made money on the side, I don't think it's going to total $20,000 a match to you can even pay. The idea of working on the side was really to pay your basic expenses. The idea was that you can have a place to live, you pay all of your food and travel costs and everything like that. The money that to play matches at that age, I think, could only really come from either your sponsor or your parents could pay that kind of money, and that's what happens. And
Wow.
I think there is some things with that money transfer, particularly coming through the parents. I think for some players it could build up a lot of problems could arise from that. There could be some angry players and things like that. And even if they pay the money, if they lose the matches, they gotta ask them to leave, not play anymore, and they're gonna get angry and things like that. So that was another thing that could start to happen.
Wow. What an interesting life and stories. I mean, I know you as John Riggio, the architect, and now I'm learning about you, the person. And wow, great stories.
Yes.
Do you frequent the open when it comes here?
Um. Oh yeah, yeah.
In
The
Queens,
U.S.
in
Open.
Flushing, right at the stadium.
Yeah. Well, I think one thing about the U.S. Open and like going to see it is, would you believe they have a philosophy in tennis that a lot of the people that are going there are really like family and friends of the tennis players. A lot of people feel that the people watching are a family of friends, which is interesting. So I think a lot of times people would fill up some bleachers and things like that, and that is sort of how a lot of the pros think.
Interesting. Wow. Whole nother career you got.
Yes.
But back up just to what did you start playing tennis?
Well, when I first was sponsored to play tennis when I was 9 years old.
Oh my gosh.
Yes. And this happened because I really wanted this Prince tennis racket that was very popular at the time. It was this big round racket. All the kids were buying it in school where I was. So I wanted to get this kind of racket. And I asked my mother to go buy one. So she looked all around to some of the local stores and she couldn't find it. So she ended up going to this pro shop in Hicksville, Long Island, and it's owned by Patrick Mulroney. And she bought this racket. But what happened was the first day I got the racket, I started to play with it and I twisted the whole frame of the racket, completely twisted, because I was able to hit the ball so hard that the whole frame twisted,
Oh
and
my
she brought it
goodness.
back. Yes, so she brought it back, and what happened was so unbelievable. He looked at the bent rack and he could tell in 2 seconds that I could become a pro tennis player. And he sponsored me, gave me some tennis rackets with a tennis bag. So my mother came back and she had a tennis bag with some tennis rackets in it and told me that I could, the whole story about how the pro shop thinks I could really become a pro tennis player, and told me to keep the
Wow.
rackets and start learning how to play. And ever since that time, I slowly progressed and I was able to really play excellent like they thought. I think at the time when that was happening, I started to play. I think they knew that I would make it at minimum in the top 10 of the pros. They didn't know if I could make it to number one or not. And that, so they knew that I was going to really become a top tennis player. My tennis shop was really the same sponsor for John McEnroe. So the
Wow.
previous pro player that he had there was really John McEnroe, and he could tell that I was going to become a big star player. And I didn't go through my whole history of playing, but I did make number one in the pro tennis in the ATP, and I did become a great success for him. So it was really good. So that's what happened.
Amazing. Wow, you have such great stories. All right, we're almost out of time. We got to take a commercial break. Let's do this. Tell us how we can reach you.
Yes, as far as my architect profession, I have a website. It's www.johnriggio.com. And there you'll find a description of my architecture, my portfolio, my contact information. You could send me an email or call me on the telephone. And as far as the tennis history, you can go on to my Facebook page. It's called John Riggio Pro Tennis Player. And I have all kinds of pictures there. I have a link to a webpage that lists a lot of my tennis history and has my videos from the podcasts.
Awesome.
And now, one thing about the podcasts have all kinds of things about celebrity names, things like that, my personal history that I don't have written down on my list. So my list is just basically showing some pictures, some tournaments, things like that.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Well, let's do this. We'll take our quick break. And when we return, we'll obviously talk more about the work you're doing, how you're helping people, and this tennis career. And you still made time to become an architect. I don't get it. How many things could you do?
Yes.
No, right? Some people have one talent, some people have like two, three. How many others do you have? What are we talking about next?
Oh yeah. Yeah, sure. I have a few talents. Yes.
All right, we'll do another introduction. We'll be back in just 3 minutes, guys. Stay tuned. Thank you so much.
Your daughter just had her first breakup. Do you A, put yourself in her shoes? B, console her?
Don't worry, sweetie. This is gonna happen a lot.
Or C, find her a new boyfriend?
Nice, single boys. That was weird.
As a parent, there are no perfect answers. But you don't have to be perfect to be a perfect parent. Thousands of teens in foster care will love you just the same.
Hey, guys, this was such a good idea to buy our drinks ahead of time. Get everything a Jack. It's
so
$10 for this.
expensive at the
it's
bar.
Like $6 per beer at the bar.
It's ridiculous.
Can't take it, man. Not in this economy.
I guess sometimes things just happen. Devastating things. It's got nothing to do with fairness. bam, your whole world changes in an instant. And you never see it coming. That's what happened to me the day my mother had a stroke. I'm Paul George, and I want you to learn the signs of a stroke fast. F-A-S-T. F, face drooping. A, arm weakness. S, speech difficulty. T, time to call 911. Because the sooner they get to the hospital, the sooner they'll get treatment. And that can make a remarkable difference in their recovery. Protect the ones you love. Spot a stroke. F-A-S-T. Fast.
Are you looking for even more of the podcasts and hosts that you love? The Podcast Business News Network is proud to announce that you now have even more ways to listen live. Check out the MyTuner Radio, online radio box, and Simple Radio apps on iOS and Android, or find us online. Search for Business News Network on mytuner-radio.com, or search Podcast Business News Network on streama.com and onlineradiobox.com/US. Take your podcast on the go and don't miss a minute of the action.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
We are back with architect John Riggio. Excited to have him here, and like tennis pro amongst everything else, learning more about him and his architectural work, and of course his personal background. And John, just to confirm, how do we reach out to you?
Yes, you can go to my webpage at www.johnriggio.com. That's www.johnriggio.com. And there you can find all my contact information for my architecture work. It shows descriptions of my work, portfolio, and contact information. You can call me, send me an email, and I will call you and we could discuss your project.
Awesome. So let's also continue down the line. I mean, what else do you want to share about this tennis career? So how do you make time for tennis now? What happened? And what made you stay, go into this whole field instead of sticking with tennis?
Yes. Well, with tennis, what was happening is this whole thing with the architect work and tennis was starting to come about as I started to get a little older. I think at the first year I was entering college. Then as the few years started going on, I was in the middle of college. Then I was graduating college. And I think my sponsors, they were wondering about the whole thing with the architect work. They were concerned the same thing, that it was going to interfere with tennis, and that it would take up a lot of my time, things like that. But I think the next thing was really to see if there were other things in sports to work on. And I think the one thing about sports is a lot of positions in sports, you do need a college education. The coaches and people like that, they have a master's degree usually in sports education, sports coaching. It's very serious work, very serious, similar to a profession like architect work, where you have to go to equivalent of 6 years of college to get your first professional degree. So a lot of the positions in sports, they did require education. And I think as far as tennis is concerned, the original college I was admitted to go to was Clemson University in South Carolina. And this one, I was going to go to that college just to play tennis. And I talked to them. They were happy about it, things like that. They knew I was sponsored by my coach, and then I had all kinds of brand sponsors like Prince Racket and things like that in my pro shop. And that experience going to college was what I didn't really have to attend the classes. The reason I would go to the Clemson University is really just to play the pro tennis there. They have a whole line of playing tennis that is really like after high school, and as you get into the sports, and you would play the tennis there. And there was some students that I think that did go to Clemson those years. I think there was a few of them. I remember knowing some that were older than me, and they liked Clemson, and it was really good. But what happened was I ended up not attending that college. There was some family problems where it was far away, and I couldn't get there. And so since my playing was really good, I just stayed with just the pro line of tennis. Didn't have to attend college to play tennis. And so my college education was really just for the architect work. And so this whole thing with playing tennis and doing architect work, there was some questions along the way. And I think, like I was saying before, that the whole idea of people getting side jobs and everything were really to stop a problem of the player potential not having any money, living very poor, or going homeless. And so I think that idea, of course, was the first priority. But then as you get into it, there are other problems that were developing. One of them was, since I was playing so excellent, had really big sponsors. I'll have to go through the whole thing about my sponsors again, but my contract, just for instance, really started to move up. I think when I first was sponsored, my contract was officially $500,000. Slowly moved up to $5 million when I was playing at Sutton East in Manhattan. And then from there, at the end of Sutton East, my contract then was offered at $25 million. It was sold for $30 million. Then from there, it was bought over for $100 million by Perot. It was Perot, and then it was then bought over again for $100 million by Mitsubishi Japan Sports. Then from there, it did expand with some partners, putting some money in to $120 million. Now, at the time, I think very few people had that kind of contract. And I think even in the Long Island Newsday Sports, they hadn't made listed at the time. When my contract was bought by the Mitsubishi Japan, it was $100 million. And I think the other top players were really Jose Canseco and Michael Jordan in basketball, Jose Canseco in baseball, Michael Jordan in basketball. And there was also, at the time, Magic Johnson, the basketball player. He also had a large contract at that level too. And so those were the biggest. And I was the number one in tennis. Another player who had a really big contract that was wasn't as high as mine, but I think was really one of the largest, was really Guillermo Vilas. I don't know if you've heard of the tennis player Guillermo Vilas. So I think Guillermo Vilas, I don't know if everyone knows his name as a tennis player, but he was another player, was really like a number one tennis player, big money winner. And I was a similar player like him, played in the same circuit of tournaments. And my contract, I really started to surpass his numbers and really went up to 100 million, and that contract ended up as $120 million. So that I was able to surpass those numbers. The other top players that people see in the news, they were on the list, but their numbers weren't as high. So I think below my numbers were really Guillermo Vilas was the number player below me in the rankings. So he was really, and he was an older player. So I was able to surpass him, but I don't know if everyone knows his name, but he was really a number one winning player and playing at the top, and he was over there. So I think when I was playing with all the top pros, the ones they see locally in the newspaper, he was there too. I don't know if they always showed him there, but he was there too. And he was another top winner. So that's what was going on. I think every once in a while, the sport pages, they do show people's contracts and things like that. Some of that might be indication of who was playing really good, who was a big winner, things like that. And so during those years, that is what was happening with the contracts and things like that. And so there's a whole stories of different kinds of sport business like that, and how you were playing and things like that, and then your arrangement with how you would make money playing sports. So that whole thing, as far as uh, the player getting money to live on, is really what started this whole trend in sports, with players needing to have a side job, needing to go to
Wow.
college to get a profession and
Yeah.
things like that. And I think I've saw on television things like that. Different kinds of sport players. When you don't see them playing on the field, they might be doing other things. I think I was saying on one my podcast that in the work I do now, some of the people that I work with that are on the same project, they play pro sports, not necessarily even in tennis, maybe in baseball, football. They have played pro tennis, pro
Wow.
sports, and we do work in the same construction industry. So I think the idea of people having a job, making money on the side, and playing pro sports is it's obviously present. I see it around me, and we're working together, and so I know a number of pro sport players that are working in construction. I mean, we're working in the same area, working the same kind of jobs. So that's something interesting. But I think like the question you always say is like getting more involved with sports, other jobs within sports. I think they really didn't work all those things out.
Mm-hmm.
I think one idea, like I was saying, is to try to keep people just keeping themselves in sports over extended number of years, was to add on maybe certain things like that you need to somehow stay in the sport or stay around the sport a certain number of years, not necessarily involving education or tests or something like that. I think what happened in sports with me is also when I was playing so many matches in a certain number of times of when I was playing, is that it was equaling 1 year of tennis was equaling 4 years for compared to most tennis
Wow.
professionals. So most pro tennis players, top pros, I was playing 4 times as many matches, and that's how my sponsors were running things, and I was doing that, playing a lot of matches in a short amount of time. So that's what was happening there. And then I think going back to also that I was saying about those years when I wasn't playing, like I was around maybe 30 years old, and I wasn't. There was a quiet time because what happened is my contract, some sponsors, including Bernie Tapie, who owned Adidas at the time, and then another sporting goods a company from Europe. They bought into my contract, and they added on to my contract with the Mitsubishi Japan, and went up to $120 million. Now the only thing is the new lead contact, they had problems contacting me because at that time I was a little older, moving into different locations to live and doing all kinds of things, moving in with my girlfriend, things like that. So that was a problem. I didn't really have cell phones yet, so there was some delays going on with things like that. So from that time, that's why things were just a little quiet for a couple of years, and I think the one girlfriend I was just explaining about, she was entertainer Cindy Shan, that was a model that was right on television, on everyone's television screens with the L'Oreal commercials where they have long, beautiful hair.
Yes.
And she was the model. She was one of the models that they had there with the long, beautiful hair commercial. So that was really
Wow.
interesting. So I was meeting people who were really still on television and things like that. And so that was really interesting at that time. And but the tennis took a few years, and it slowly started to come back. And I'm more involved with tennis now, and it's pretty good. Yeah, instead of just forgetting about the tennis, I was able to really remember a lot of the tennis, and I'm happy to talk about it. I think a lot of people are interested about it, and that was good. I think also, yeah, I was watching YouTube. I think with the whole thing with YouTube was getting a lot of new people in there, and I was watching a pro tennis player's story of how he played ITF
Mm-hmm.
and his story of going around the country, traveling around and signing autographs, winning matches, and things like that. Really started to stimulate my mind that I could really talk about my tennis career. I could just
Yeah.
say my own everyday story. Uh, and just remembering back, I think my sponsors and my lawyers, they did encourage me to go ahead with, talking about my tennis career and things like that, just on my own personal basis. And so I'm happy to tell everyone about my stories. It's pretty good.
Wow. Awesome. What a career. John Riggio, remind us again how we can contact you.
Yes, the easiest way to contact me is to go to my webpage at www.johnriggio.com. I have my contact information here. My architect office is at that webpage and has my work for my professional work, architect work in the New York City, New Jersey, and Pennsylvania area. And I can help you in any state. And I have years of experience with a lot of projects, a lot of very nice projects. And then as far as the tennis, I do have a Facebook page. It's called John Riggio Pro Tennis Player. And you can go there and there's links on there. I have links showing some list of matches, description of my career, my playing and things like that. And so it is pretty good.
Wow. I'm so fascinated. This is a whole nother facet of you I didn't know about yet. I know you as the architect, not the pro tennis player. How often do you play now?
Now I've got it where I'm having my own tennis meetup, and
Wow.
it's been meeting 3 days a week
Mm-hmm.
on Fridays, Sundays, and Wednesdays. And this has been going on for a number of years now. I've had it back playing now. I think it's more than 7 years now. And I've continued to play tennis. I'm back into playing tennis, been teaching some tennis, and it's pretty good.
Amazing. We still have 5 minutes left, John. I'm not cutting you short. I just like getting to know you. This is amazing. Really?
Yes, and the meetup is very easy to go to. You just go on to meetup.com and look up Central New Jersey Tennis.
Yeah.
I have 1,400 people on the meetup, and you just RSVP and you just play locally over here in Central New Jersey. I also had in the winter, I had the tennis bubble where we were playing over in Staten Island, right over the bridge over here. And that was a very nice location too. So in the summer times, we're playing outdoors, and we have three different locations here. One's in Rahway, one's in Edison, New Jersey, and one is in New Brunswick, New Jersey. So we play at three different locations. So we have a variety of locations to play at, different kind of courts and things like that. And that's what I've been doing. So that it's working pretty good.
Amazing. And but for the tennis meetup, do you have to have experience or can anyone show up?
Yeah, anyone could show up.
Really?
Yeah, usually on Wednesday I have the lessons for anyone who is
The
the complete
beginners.
beginner. Yes. When I was younger, I used to teach the people who were really already established pros who are really trying to learn how to win more matches. These days, Wednesdays, I've been teaching people who really don't have any experience playing tennis. They're new to the game, might not even have a tennis racket. So a lot of times I have to tell them to go to the store, buy a tennis racket, get some tennis
Yeah.
balls, come down, and teach them the basics of tennis.
Wow. Amazing, amazing. And what about at any age? What is the tennis meetup? What ages are,
Well, on
suggested?
the meetup.com, you have to be at least 18 years old.
Okay. Fair enough, fair enough. But you obviously as starting young, you would encourage people to start young with their kids.
Yes, originally I did learn tennis by playing with my parents, my father, my mother. My father's a pretty good tennis player, and he started me off teaching me some tennis. we started off with these old wood rackets,
Mm-hmm.
and that's how I started learning. And I think when I was even younger at that time, I was breaking those wood rackets too. I was hitting the ball and I was breaking the wood rackets that we had. And I think my father in particular could tell that same type of thing, that I could become a pro tennis player, because he had some experience, took some tennis lessons, and he was certified 4.5 player. So he knew about the basics of tennis, and he still felt the same thing, that I could become a pro tennis player.
Wow. Fascinating. Okay, got to ask, for someone who's suffering with carpal tunnel, arthritis, and tendonitis now from working using my hands, what about someone who plays tennis? Do you have any ailments from that? And plus, you as an architect, though, you're hands-on. Do you have any ailments from the sport or from?
No, I think over the years I did have some small injuries, but I didn't really get seriously hurt playing tennis. I was lucky, and all my injuries did heal pretty good. I think I think when I'm older, I think a lot of people, they went to the weight gym. I think the weight gym doesn't really help your tennis game too much. If you get into too heavy weights, you can have a problem of pulling your tendons and things like that. So, like doing weights where you're pulling your tendons and things, you don't want to do that. It's gonna hurt your tennis game. You want to go with a set of exercises. You can use some weights, but it's slightly different. You don't want to pull your tendons and things like that. I think that's what I was always explaining, when people older, after they play, they go to the weight gym a lot, and then you go to play tennis, you find yourself, you're using your muscles wrong. You're trying to like push the ball. You can't push the ball. You have to really swing your racket around to really hit the ball correctly. And I think a lot of people go through that when they're older, because everyone goes through the years of working out in the weight gym. And but as far as the tennis is good, you don't want to pull your tendons or anything using heavy weights, things like that. They might not heal, and then you have a problem that your racket is not so stable, things like that. You also want to make sure your joints are in the sockets. You do there's all kinds of tennis exercises to push the joints in your sockets, and that can get in the game and you play better like that. So that is one thing I always teach people who are just learning all those different things, and it's been working pretty good. And the exercises, the basic exercise, I teach them what's best for tennis and things like that. And so that's what's usually been happening.
Awesome. Well, thank you. Pleasure having you here. One more time, remind us of the other website too. It's John Riggio Pro
Tennis player.
Tennis Player. Okay, good, because I don't have that in my
And
notes.
that's
I
on
didn't
Facebook.
know
You
this.
find me on Facebook with that webpage.
Perfect.
That's only a Facebook webpage.
Oh my goodness. All right. And then go to the YouTube channel, go to johnriggio.com to learn more about his architectural side. And thank you for today. Awesome. Really
You're
exciting
welcome.
didn't know you were this talented.
This
Not
is
that
good
you're
talking
not
to
with
you.
architecture, but this is fascinating. Good for you. Wow. And is there anything else that's next for you? What else are you going to unveil to me next time? I'm also in the.
Oh yes, I'll have excellent stories. I've been remembering new ones too, and sort of have a lot of interesting stories to talk about.
Feel free. I mean, I don't know your situation with your work computer there, but if you want to share images on your screen as we talk about this, you can, whether it's architectural design, you in the tennis world, you could share your screen and show us some things on the computer itself. Just a heads up. Okay.
Yes, sure, I can do that.
Awesome. Sounds good. Yeah. Thank you so much. All right.
You're
Have a
welcome.
fantastic day. And to all of our listeners, stay tuned. More of the show is on the way. John Riggio, pro tennis player extraordinaire and architect, does it all. Bye.
Are you looking for even more of the podcasts and hosts that you love? The Podcast Business News Network is proud to announce that you now have even more ways to listen live. Check out the MyTuner Radio, online radio box, and Simple Radio apps on iOS and Android, or find us online. Search for Business News Network on mytuner-radio.com, or search Podcast Business News Network on streama.com and onlineradiobox.com/US. Take your podcast on the go and don't miss a minute of the action.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
For nearly 2,000 severely injured veterans, everyday life has become filled with barriers.
Day-to-day simple tasks can become pretty daunting.
I have to carry my chair up 2 flights of steps or have somebody do it for me.
What scares me the most is just the falling.
When I'm struggling with my house, I think, to have that one great barrier just knocked down, it's crucial.
Home for Our Troops is a wonderful nonprofit that builds a
mortgage-free, fully adaptive, handicap-accessible house.
And there's no catch.
It'll be our very first home that we've ever owned. This is a game changer.
This is where your life begins again.
We need you to join us in completing this important mission. Please visit hfotusa.org and help build homes and rebuild lives.
Because of you, everything's going to be okay.